Emma, it must be so exciting to take on a role like this where you have access to the person that you're playing. On the other hand, I would imagine you want to put a cap on the amount of time that you actually spend with the person you're playing so that you don't run into the danger of doing an impersonation. How did you decide what that sweet spot was of amount of time to spend with Billie Jean without it being too much?
I don't think it was really a decision so much as I had never played a real sorry. I had never played a real person before, much less, you know, someone like Billie Jean. And so I wasn't sure what my process was going to need to be. So when I met her, she was so wonderful, and Alana, her partner, they were so welcoming to me, and you know, Billie Jean made it very clear early on that she would be open to whatever process we kind of needed to go through in order to bring this whole thing to fruition. And so we threw some balls around on a tennis court, and then I kind of, quickly realized that I wanted to watch a lot of footage from her in the time period and read a lot about her then, because she is so fully formed now and is able to talk about all of this with closure and hindsight, and a lot of, you know, she could just see it more clearly than she might have been able to at age 29. So so I ended up just doing a lot of research on her just in that very specific time frame.
Trying to do as well. If you notice in the Battle of the Sexes, that how white everything really is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we had two people. I think we had two people of color in the audience. Thank God Rosie was the announcer, else we would have been in big trouble. But we had Jim Brown, the NFL football player, and then we also had George Foreman, the great boxer, and George bet on me, and of course I knew Jim would vote for Bobby. I would want him would bet on Bobby. So anyway, George Foreman ended up being a security guard at the end, because we had no security guards in those days. At the end.
I mean, that was. I was thinking about that moment in all other scenes of the film, because I think that because she has such strength and because she holds it together, and it's all just right under the surface for most of the film, you know, that sort of breaking point was, you have to earn that moment of finally seeing everything that's been happening underneath the surface this whole time, because she was on 4 hours of sleep every night. All of this is going on with Marilyn and with Larry. You know, the way she's playing, all of that, you can't sit in the overwhelm of that, and then in that moment, it's, you know, after winning, it was pivotal to me, definitely, certainly as an actor, to you know that this is where we were.
But you know, it was, I cannot tell you how fun it was to work together again, and to be able to have a character that could highlight all that Steve brings to a part. And you know, we all knew the kind of funny character that Bobby was publicly, but what was exciting to us was the private side of Bobby, and that's where Steve showed just his range.
Steve, where does Bobby Riggs rank on the fun to play scale of the big parts that you've done?
He's up there because, as Jonathan was saying, there's that public persona, and then there's this guy that no one really knew. And I remember watching, when I started doing research, there's a great 60 Minutes interview with him. And he's doing his thing, he's playing his character, it's this spiel, but the conversation came around to his wife and talking about how they've recently separated, and she's better off without me, and she's a great woman, the best, but but there was even within all of that bravado and that crazy over-the-top nature of his, you could see this pain that he was suffering through. And to me, that was sort of the root of what I was going for. That there was this public thing, but even in his public persona, you could see the pain and sort of the complexity that was lying underneath it all.
Steve, last time I saw you this summer, you were doing the Graham Norton show in London, and I was sitting there in the audience, and I remarked to myself, well, Steve looks great. And then like a week later, all these like hot Silver Fox Steve Carell articles came out, and it was so much fun watching you squirm on every morning show when they would ask you about it. So are you worried now with this movie coming out that you're taking a step back? Neither?
I appreciate this line of questioning. Well, I will say that I read one review of this film that talked about how bad my wig was. And it's my real hair. I grew out my hair, and I I grew these massive chops and actually used the same, because Bobby Riggs, he was such a self-promoter. He, I think, wanted to get a deal with Carell because he always mentioned, I use Carell number 87, and I think he was trying to get Carell to support him, to sponsor him. He was always looking for an angle. So used the same color, which was kind of an orangey brown, and grew these sideburns, which he didn't dye, so those were gray. My hair was turning brown, and then me and my wife and my kids went on vacation before we shot, and they didn't want to be seen with me. And I have to say, it did sort of affect my love life with my wife.
You're clearly so amused by Steve, and I think that comes through in the character of Priscilla too, which is such a pleasure to watch. And even when Bobby is at his most exasperating, there's like a little bit of a smile on Priscilla's face in the way that you play her so beautifully. What was behind that relationship and her endless patience with him, do you think?
Well, I think I have to give credit to Steve, really. His portrayal, yes, your portrayal of Bobby was so human and ultimately so complicated. And what I loved about him was the sheer desperation inside of him to be liked. And I think that Priscilla recognized how vulnerable he was because he had that inside of him, and that allowed her to really love him and want to take care of that part of him. So, yeah, I don't know how I would have been able to play her if it wasn't you playing Bobby. I probably would have been a whole different story.
Yeah. Bill, it's so fascinating to watch you as Jack Kramer, this embodiment of like friendly misogyny, right? And then to think that this is all in our lifetime, that this all was going on. What was it like to kind of run all that through your head and put this character on screen?
Yeah, I was really, I had seen the Jack Kramer racket, and that was such an institution in a way for tennis. But and then he has a book called Tennis, My Life in Tennis, 40 Years Experience. And I think, Bobby's book was Tennis is My Racket. And I think when you think of what an institutional man he was interested, he was the #1 player. And when you look through, with a real person, you can find their obituaries, and his is full of great praise and great warmth of how he lit up the room whenever he came in there. He had the most curmudgeonly partner that he doubled with that was notorious for being one of the orneriest persons that's ever, in modern sports, kind of. And he said, well, I was made a better person by Jack Kramer.
Okay.
So then that's what I came to these guys with and said, well, how do we include all of that? And they were interested in finding that.
Otherwise, he's just a one-note villain.
Yeah.
What
Right.
would that be?
Yeah.
Right. Eric, what's the best thing about being a Steve Carell, Bobby Riggs wingman?
You mean besides those short shorts?
Yeah, exactly.
I got a lot of comments on Instagram about those short shorts. It's really going to help out the box office between your sideburns and my short shorts. I think Lorne's a big part of the movie. He was there, when we were filming a lot of these scenes. He's an amazing, he's 73 now. I played him one day at lunch. He beat the crap out of me. I got like 1 point off him. He hustled me for like $20, which I then paid him. But he's a remarkable man, and I wanted to make sure to kind of capture some of that cool kind of swagger that he has in this relationship that obviously dates back for 20 years that only guys like that have. And then working with Steve is...
The audience here, I definitely noticed at the end of the film when the directing card comes, it's directed by Valerie Ferris and Jonathan Dayton. That's different than I've seen before. Are we talking flip of a coin here, or is there a reason?
His idea. He's going to give him credit for that.
It began alphabetical, and we've done this for so long, and it's felt like the right time to just remind everyone that it's a team and.
I'm not just the and.
Right.